Programming made possible by Bardstown, Kentucky. There's something beautiful about a small town. And Four Roses Bourbon. Thank you for your support.
Did you know Kentucky has more navigable miles of water than any other state in the U.S. except Alaska?
Is Alaska still a state?
Includes 90,000 miles of streams and dozens of rivers.
It's also quite famous for some other liquids, those which flow from a barrel, that being beers, bourbons, and wine.
Many of the world's best-known distilleries can be found right here in the Bluegrass State, and interestingly enough, pretty darn close to many of our lakes, rivers, and streams.
We're here to take you on an expedition of the secrets and histories of our intricate waterways while visiting Kentucky's distilleries, breweries, and wineries.
I'm Carrie.
And I'm Kyle. And we're two Kentuckians who are pretty proud of our state and want to share a sip of what the Commonwealth has to offer. Well, hello there, Carrie. How are you?
Yeah, this is a beautiful old home.
Well, you know, it is a pretty historic old home. This has some significance in Kentucky. It's my old Kentucky home, but not really mine, actually.
Would you be talking about Stephen Foster and our state song, My Old Kentucky Home?
That's the fella. Yep, he did. That's the one. I'd hum a few, but I'm gonna spare everyone that.
Oh, come on, Kyle. The sun is shining bright.
That it is, and what a fantastic day for it to be shining. This is the annual Kentucky Bourbon Festival in Bardstown.
Ooh.
I am gonna go and check out how to make bourbon, how to mix it, and how to pair it with food.
Ah, well, I know you know how to drink it, so we don't have to worry about that.
What about you? What do you got going on?
Well, I'm gonna learn a little bit of the history about Bardstown, and then I'm gonna take a couple paddles on two different forks of the Salt River, the Beach Fork and the Rolling Fork of the Salt.
Well, you know what? We've got a very full day planned, so how about this? Let's meet up for breakfast at a local cafe watering hole and catch up on what we learned.
That sounds great. Don't stay out all night.
Yeah, I'll try not to. Have fun. Wow, we are here in historic Bardstown, Kentucky at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, standing outside the Oscar Getz Museum of Whiskey History. We're gonna go inside that Museum of Whiskey History and learn a little bit about the grains that it takes to make that wonderful concoction. Let's go check it out.
Sir, excuse me. Please do not drink those samples before we start the class.
So Tyler, very interesting session you just went through.
Thank you.
What you guys are doing, this Moonshine University, tell me just a little bit about that.
So Moonshine University, we are a spirits education facility located in downtown Louisville, Kentucky. And we opened up in 2013. That's when we had our first class, was in January of that year. And what we do is we teach people how to start their own distilleries.
So you guys came down today to the Bourbon Festival to talk a little about whiskey grains and what goes in there, which we had a little display here at the museum behind us on that, but we don't know how many varieties.
So there are four main grains that comprise about 95% of all of the whiskeys out there, and that is corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley. So I say I'm only giving that caveat to malted barley because you can malt any grain, but malted barley has the highest enzymatic potential out of all of those different grains. And you want those enzymes to convert those starches that are present in those grains into sugar.
Science. We all know I love science and bourbon.
So by converting those starches into sugar, that is what those yeast are the little fungus that create alcohol. So they eat the sugar and convert that into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Right? So for example, bourbon, this is Bourbon Fest, it says you must use at least 51% corn in your recipe. That's all it says. The rest is up to interpretation. So you can use any other kind of corn that you want to use. So be it, white corn, blue corn, purple corn,
Caramel corn.
caramel corn. Yeah, it doesn't say.
Cheddar corn.
Yeah, cheddar corn. I don't see any issues with that. Craft distillers, they're all alchemists in their field now because they know they can't beat these big heritage brands that are all present, here in Bardstown. They can't beat them at their own game. They know that. Why try and fight a behemoth at its own, in its own playground? So they do something else. So that's why they want to do blue corn, or Jephthah Creed, for example, out in Shelbyville, they use bloody butcher corn, right? And that creates a vastly different flavor profile than just, your typical standard yellow 2-number dent corn, which is what's typically used in the majority of the industry.
And that's what, at this bourbon festival, when you go around, if you come to Bardstown, right, you're gonna be able to try a lot of these.
Oh yeah.
I think we should probably go find some of those. What do you think?
We are in bourbon country. This is the place to do it.
Good point. And my garage looks a lot like this room. Is there a problem with having the stills at home?
I understand that you're going to tell me a little bit today about the history of Bardstown's formation.
Right, and I talk history like other people talk sports. So I always want people, when they leave here, to understand more about where they've been visiting. Carrie, I want to take you down Broadway. I have some of my beautiful old homes here, and I think you'd enjoy seeing them.
Oh, absolutely. I love old houses. Tell me a little bit about the history of Bardstown.
Well, it goes back to 1780 when William Bard, the surveyor, would lay out a town on the land that his brother David Bard owned. They had acquired this land through a land warrant from the French and Indian War. They laid it out on top of this hill because it was so much healthier to live up on a hill where all the water flushed all the dirt and the manure and everything over the hill. And so that's what would happen here. Bardstown's date is 1780. We became a county in 1785, and then we became Bardstown, Kentucky in 1792.
Wow.
We have over 300 houses listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Wow.
You're standing in the middle of 20 of them. You see the plaque on the wall?
Yeah.
We note that all over town in different houses, give you a little history and also let you appreciate what the early settlers did, what they had to face. Lots of people ask me where Bardstown got its name, and they first thought is Shakespeare, the Bard. And of course I have to tell them that's not exactly right. The Bard came from the Bard family, and they didn't call it Bardstown, they called it Salem. So Salem was the name for the first 3 years, but everyone referred to it as Bard's Town because he planned it and he was marketing it. So from 1784 on, we've been Bardstown.
So the railroad arrived here too, not too long after.
Right before the Civil War. 1 year before the Civil War. Just in time to start hauling the Yankee materials, the tombstones, the horses, the hospital goods.
Well, so now after the Civil War is when bourbon really became a big thing here.
You know what we like to say? The Union soldiers came and we gave them a taste of bourbon, and from then on they were going to buy Kentucky bourbon. And when the railroads expanded out west, that's where our market expanded. We put our barrels of whiskey on those rail cars, sent them to Colorado, to California, to Texas. Anywhere that rail went, our bourbon could go.
Wow. Well, Dixie, you're going to take me to where it all started, aren't you?
I hope so. If you don't have it, you don't have bourbon.
All right, let's go.
This is some kind of museum, I gotta say. They've got a little bit of everything in here. Anyways, all this science talk has made me thirsty as usual, so I say we go check out some mixology and maybe go try a drink. So, Linda, we're here in this pretty cool old saloon in historic Bardstown, Kentucky. And what exactly are you doing here at the Bourbon Festival today?
Well, I was actually very honored to be asked to participate and put a class on called The Art of the Julep. And we're going to be sharing with, or we did share with folks, the history of the julep, where it came from, and how it became the classic for the Kentucky Derby.
Right, I've heard about this at that big horse race in May. So the Derby and the julep, they do go hand in hand.
Absolutely. The essential ingredient for a mint julep is good crushed ice. You fill it up with crushed ice, you add a little bit of simple syrup, you put the bourbon in, and then you put a sprig of mint, and you have a mint julep.
But today you went through some fancier stuff. Like,
I actually
you had a little
did.
bit of a twist on these things.
Actually did. We had fun with the julep today. And part of the julep comes back from way back when in the ancient age where it was the word julab, which is a Arabic word for julep, or it was rose water that was mixed with liquor. And it was kind of like the old adage of a spoonful of sugar will help the medicine go down. It was something to add to elixirs and medicines to help it make it a little bit more palatable. And when it came to the South, there was a lot of different whiskeys being made out there. Some of them were good, some were not so good. So to make them more palatable, you'd add a little flavoring, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of sugar, and make a cocktail. Today what we did is we did the classic mint julep, but we also had a couple different twists. We made a blackberry basil julep using a blackberry basil simple syrup and bourbon. Every family has their own recipe and their own traditions of when and how they serve juleps, and so we wanted to bring that to life today for some of our guests.
How cool is that? So, but what you're saying is the julep spoonful of sugar and this medicine, oh, is this medicine?
It's gotten a lot better over time. If you go back in old age, when back in the 1800s, where whiskey was a hot commodity, people were making it and trying to make it look brown with a lot of different things. And some
Dirt
of those,
and such.
well, rusty nails, tobacco spit, those
flavor.
sound really delicious, right?
Yeah.
So to make it more palatable, you put a little sugar in it to make it to where you would drink it.
Well, thanks so much for
Thank you.
taking the time to show us some of these beautiful, wonderful cocktails.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Linda. So, Joy, we're up here in the VIP loft.
Yes, we are.
And, I've been told you're somewhat of a VIP.
They take good care of me when I come down here.
Well, why is that? What is going on?
I've been a bartender for over 50 years. I live in Louisville, and I was lucky enough to write 2 cocktail books, the Kentucky Bourbon Cocktail Book and more Kentucky Bourbon Cocktail.
Because you need a sequel. So 50 years bartending, and so the bourbon cocktail, you had something to do with that. Like before,
I would
tell
like
me
to
about
think
this.
so I started doing all of these crazy infusions and making crazy cocktails, and I got a lot of slack. You can't do that to bourbon, and all the old cigar smoking dudes. You can't. I go, hey, I'm my bottle of bourbon. I can do anything I want to do. You surveyed every bar in Kentucky. I guarantee you 50% of the bourbon drinkers drink it with Coke or Sprite or ginger ale or Diet Coke or, God forbid, tonic.
Oh.
But it is what it is. And here I am in the VIP lounge.
Because of that, we're getting to talk to you. So it's all
Drinking bourbon.
Good. It's
Drinking
all good.
bourbon.
Exactly.
And notice the little glass. we're advertising right here.
This is the Kentucky
Bourbon Festival.
glass. Joy, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Enjoy the Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Count on it.
Enjoy.
Dixie, what is this behind us?
Well, remember I told you I wanted to take you where you had to find this one ingredient that's very important to whiskey making. From the very beginning, the first settlers, they would come and they'd plant their corn, but they had to have water, and they had to have pure water. And we're sitting in front of the Tom Moore Spring.
Wow. So this is where bourbon began.
Began at this distillery, yes, because Tom Moore and Madeline Moore were partners. They started a distillery right over the hill here. They used the spring as their source of clear, pure water. Well, Mr. Mattingly was kind of loose with his money, and he and Tom Moore divided, and Tom went 100 feet down the road, within spitting distance almost, started his own distillery. So we have Tom Moore and we have Mattingly Moore. 2 distilleries, 1 source of water.
Wow.
And that water is still running. Now we're talking 1884, 1890. We didn't have city water here. We call it city water now, treated water. We didn't have it here until about 1920.
Wow.
So if you were a distillery, you had to find your limestone spring. And most distilleries are located where the limestone springs are. It's nice if you're along the railroad, but you've got to be along the limestone spring.
Well, Dixie, if we're not using this water for bourbon anymore, where's it going?
Well, it's where all water goes, downhill. In this case, this spring is coming out of the side of this hill, like many in Kentucky, goes downhill to the creek. The creek runs downhill to the river, which is directly ahead of us. That's the Beach Fork. Of course, the Beach Fork runs into the Rolling Fork into Salt, and into the Ohio. Now, why do we want to keep up with those rivers? Because that's where we put the bourbon barrels on the flatboats. Sent them down the river to Natchez, New Orleans, and they brought the money back.
Well, Bardstown seems like it's the real heart of bourbon country, so it's perfect for the Bourbon Festival to be here.
Right. Well, we've been doing the Bourbon Festival 26 years.
Wow.
And the thing that makes me so happy with it is the volunteers that help do it, and then we bring everybody from the distilleries together. We bring the guys who roll the barrels, we bring the people in the bottling house, we bring the drivers of the trucks. All of them come together as a big family, and they meet their cohorts and other distilleries. Now, I can remember when there were only 9 distilleries here in Kentucky. Today they tell me there's 52. There's no way I'm going to know all the master distilleries in 52 distilleries.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dixie, for showing us this great spring.
Well, it's one of the few in Kentucky that I can say has been providing water to distilleries since the middle of the 1800s.
That's incredible.
We're here at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, which is a pretty fantastic event, and there's some bourbon. And today there was some ham. So my question is really, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sexy do you find the salted meat category?
That's a great and funny question. I think it's a 10 because, I mean, cured meat to me is fantastic.
Cured meats, just really, there's something about that's sensual.
Absolutely.
You know?
People don't always understand just how good it is because they've eaten it in too large a portion instead of a paper thin slice. And they don't know what to pair it with. And here's what to pair it with, people.
You do.
Right
that's what we're learning today is this pairing of interesting, the cured ham with different types of bourbon.
Right, and you see they complement each other. They have the shared flavor note of smoke, obviously the char of the barrel and the smoke of the country ham. And you also see the caramel aspects, the citrus aspects, also in whiskey that offset the porky, tangy, salty flavors of ham. So it works really, really well together. And it can work well with tequila, it can work well with wine. Ham plays well with alcohol. I came across the pairing on a late night editing this book and nibbling on some ham and had a little neat whiskey, and I thought, eureka, this stuff matches so extremely well, and that's really where it came from.
Aren't accidents the best way to discover great things?
True,
Absolutely.
really.
I mean, that's it. So you wrote a whole book on this, and now we've here at the Bourbon Festival have been pairing these things. You can really pair anything.
You just have to enjoy them and put them together, and that opens up your interest in it. It opens up your palate to new flavors and explore. I mean, that's what you need to do with flavors, explore them.
Thanks. And I think there was a gentleman there who poured all his bourbons into one glass, took a shot, and then ate all his ham before you started. But, you know, I mean, you know, to each their own, right?
With ham and bourbon, it's just kind of a match made in heaven. So your ham, you've got like this nice, almost like a savory and saltiness, and then it mixes so well with the sweetness of the bourbon and the characteristics that can be pulled through, and food really enhances the bourbon experience.
What can I do to learn more about this, or how do I go about this?
Experimentation is really great when it comes to this. I'm just gonna say, sitting down, sipping and tasting and going through. But in all honesty, when you're talking about how you can pair well, what I would do is taste your bourbon first and figure out what characteristics it is that you're finding in this. Is there a sweetness? Is there a caramelize? Is there, you know, are you getting a corn note out of it? What are you really pulling from it? And then how do you counterbalance that? So if I get like a pear note, maybe I want to pair it with something a little bit more cinnamon. Or if I'm getting already the baking spicing notes, I want to take something that's going to kind of pull away from the spice of it and really kind of accentuate. Maybe there's a dried fruit note that would make it taste almost like a pie.
You know what? Let's go find eating and drinking. I think there's something going on tonight. You want to go check it out?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Done.
Let's
All
roll.
Well, it is a beautiful day for a paddle on the Beach Fork, which is a tributary of the Rolling Fork River, which makes its way into the Salt River. and the salt eventually makes its way into the Ohio River. The Salt River is actually named for the first commercial industry that took place in Kentucky, which was Henry Christ Salt Works at Bullitt Lick, which is in Bullitt County, close to here. But the Salt Fork is named for his operation there that started in 1779. They used to make salt the old way then, where they would boil off 400 gallons of water to make a 50-pound take of salt. And all of that salt, to get to the pioneers, either had to go overland on old buffalo trails, or it had to go down the river. So being on the river was really important to those early pioneers who loaded all of their cargo onto flatboats. The Salt River was never one that could be easily navigated by steamboats. So flatboats went up and down this river until we founded our modern day highways and carriage roads. Well, we're on the Beach Fork of the Salt River, and it drains about 600 miles of Anderson, Nelson, and I think Washington counties. While they don't use the water from the Beach Fork to make bourbon, it's certainly why they founded Bardstown. The Beach Fork is at the bottom of the hill, so the water can kind of wash things down. There's actually a great little story about the Beach Fork during Prohibition. Some Boy Scouts were paddling, and they thought what they smelled was maybe mom making some bread or some biscuits. But they went back, and their parents called the sheriff's office and led the sheriff back to where they were smelling those sweet smells. And it turns out there was an illegal moonshine still. So they arrested 7 people and impounded the still back in 1924.
So Jill, we are here at the Bourbon Festival, Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
We're at kind of a neat event. Tell me about what event's going on tonight here.
So this is called Bourbon, Cigars, and Jazz. We are at my old Kentucky home,
Right.
which is just a glorious venue. The weather is spectacular, so we've got a wonderful night. We've got a little jazz trio playing.
I hear some jazz music. Yep, absolutely.
Great music.
Why did this start? What was the idea? How long has it been going on?
So this is our 26th year.
26th year. Wow.
And this started as one dinner on a golf course, just to celebrate bourbon and the bourbon industry and everybody that's a part of that. And when I say everybody that's a part of that, I mean the farmers that grow our grains. And I mean the truck drivers who transport all of our products, glass suppliers, label suppliers, all the fantastic...
Cooperages. I met some guys from the Cooperages.
Yes.
I mean, they're here.
Yes.
You gotta have those barrels.
All the people that work in those industries. So this has turned from one night into a full week to celebrate that industry and our signature spirit.
As far as I know, if you're going to come to this and you're from out of town, you need to plan in advance pretty good,
Yes.
right? These
Yes.
rooms fill up fast.
They do. I mentioned 60,000 people. Oh, the rooms, the campgrounds, but it's all good. Like I said, Bardstown is the bourbon capital of the world, and they are also well versed in Kentucky hospitality. So all of our residents really roll out the red carpet and welcome those guests in.
So, Jill, why is Bardstown the bourbon capital of the world?
Have you met my good friend Dawn? She can give you all those details.
Maybe we should go find Dawn.
I think we should find Dawn.
Let's find Dawn.
Well, I'm Dawn Bristol. I'm the Director of Tourism for Visit Bardstown in Nelson County. And so my job is to tell the whole world about how wonderful Bardstown is and how you need to come see us. When we were settled, our settlers brought with them the tradition of distilling. Corn grew abundantly, so they distilled corn. It was much easier to transport corn in liquid form than in bushel form, and so they brought that art of distilling with them. And we've just got that great limestone shelf. We have great water. We have great seasons. We're just like the perfect place, in Kentucky and in Bardstown for for making bourbon, and so they just kind of stuck here. We have, 9 distilleries within 20 miles. Some of them, big national, Jim Beam, Heaven Hill, Maker's Mark, but then we also have new distilleries coming in with Lux Row and Bardstown Bourbon Company and Barton. Of course, they're very well established, and then some smaller distilleries as well. So it's just a great place to make bourbon. So we're steeped in history and bourbon. Come see us in the most beautiful small town in America and bourbon capital of the world.
We are here at this fantastic Kentucky Bourbon Festival, 26th. And I understand you, sir, have been to the first one. Tell me a little bit about what makes this such a big deal.
It's a big deal because we are celebrating one of America's great industries that goes all the way back to the earliest days of the Republic.
26 years now for this event. How have you seen it evolve? I mean, why is it so special?
Well, I'll tell you, when you're dealing with something that has a history and heritage and tradition, and that's what the industry is all about, how to produce iconic products that take time. It's really, I'll have to tell you, it's Kentucky's art form, if you really want to get down to the basics of it.
I sure hope we get out to Heaven Hill and check out those spots on one of our shows coming up, because I know you guys have some great things going on over there.
You're welcome anytime.
Let's go check out this jazz music. What do you say?
Okay, cheers.
You don't look like you made it in last night. Just spend the night in one of those bourbon barrels.
No, but I almost spent the night here. How about you? How was your paddling expedition?
Oh, it was great. It was an absolutely beautiful day to be on the river.
You know, I set out to accomplish a few things, and I did, and ended up at the Bourbon Cigars and Jazz event.
Ooh. Yeah, did you make it to all 52?
No, made it to 6, but they were good.
That's great. Well, that leaves us plenty of opportunities for other shows.
Right, exactly. That's what I'd planned it that way, honestly.
Well, maybe you want to start the morning off with a bourbon drink. I think they've got a great Bloody Mary made out of Kentucky bourbon on the menu.
You know, I think I'm gonna go with the Hangover Skillet. It looks to be a breakfast favorite here at Mammy's.
Ah.
Seems like a safe choice. You know, it's been a fun time here in Bardstown. I need a nap. Till next time.
We'll see you
downstream.